I think we're good to go, Pete. Welcome, everyone, to our Packers-Texans pregame live stream alongside Pete Dougherty. I am Olivia Reiner. If you have been absolutely hankering for some Packers football, tonight the wait finally ends. Packers-Texans. Packers get underway with the preseason tonight, kickoff at 7 p.m. Central. All eyes are going to be on second-year quarterback Jordan Love. However, there are plenty of other storylines that you're going to want to keep an eye on in tonight's game. We will get you acclimated to all of those storylines in just a moment. However, before we begin, as always, Pete knows the drill. You know the drill. You can be a part of our conversation. If you're over on Facebook, Periscope. Oh, you know what? Periscope actually doesn't exist anymore. We're not on Periscope, just Facebook and YouTube, everybody. If you have a question, go down into the comments section. Leave us your question. Pete and I want to hear from you. We'll get to all of your thoughts toward the end of our conversation today. It has been over 400 days since quarterback Jordan Love was drafted by the Packers in the 2020 NFL entry draft, and he has yet to play a game. That all ends tonight. Finally, we get to see Jordan Love take some actual reps in a game. Head coach Matt LaFleur said that the team wasn't going to be doing a ton of game planning for the Texans. However, he did say that Love would be getting a good understanding of the Houston Texans defense in walkthroughs leading up to tonight's game. What will this showdown between the Packers and the Texans tell us about Jordan Love that we don't already know?
I would assume, or I would guess, this is going to be incremental. I just saw, as I was scrolling through Twitter, I think it said it's been 600 and some days since he's taken a snap in a real game. So that's a long time. I just am anticipating this is going to look a lot like training camp. By the way, welcome back from Tokyo. I know you've missed most of camp up to now while you were covering the Olympics. But it's just a roller coaster ride with Love. I mean, there are plays where he shows the arm talent where you go, okay, I see why they drafted this guy in the first round. And there are plays where he'll miss somebody in the flat, just miss the throw. He'll throw down the middle late in the count and into traffic and either get the ball intercepted or possibly intercepted. I would assume we'll see a few really good plays and some bad drives that are 3 and outs or 4 and outs. And it'll just be, I would guess, an extension from training camp. The one thing we don't see is how good a scrambler he is because there's no tackling in practice. So we'll see what kind of instincts and how willing and how much he wants to actually run the ball. Deshaun Kaiser, if you remember him, he was looking to run if his first guy wasn't open. Love does not give off that. Like, he's looking to throw the ball, but he's going to have to use his legs too to keep the chains moving.
The Packers will have their eyes on Jordan Love in tonight's game. From the Houston Texans side, they will have their eyes on new defensive coordinator Lovie Smith. Packers fans, you should be well acquainted with Lovie Smith. He spent some time in the NFC North, former Bears head coach. Smith grew up in the Tampa 2 system, much like new Packers defensive coordinator Joe Barry. When Jordan Love is out on the field making his reads tonight, what should he expect from Lovie Smith?
Yeah, if the Tampa 2 is still basically what it was, there are some throws that just aren't going to be there. It's tough to get deep balls on cover 2 defenses because they usually have 2 safeties deep. They drop their middle linebacker really deep. He's going to have to be patient. The underneath crossing routes, I think that's a big route to complete when you're going against a cover 2. So this will test his patience and to fight the urge to want to hit the big strike.
The Packers, like I said, going to have their eyes on Jordan Love. I am going to be having my eyes on the 5 athletes in front of Jordan Love. Yes, the Packers' offensive line has been in a lot of flux this offseason because left tackle David Bakhtiari is still rehabbing from an ACL injury. It is unclear whether or not he's going to be healthy enough to start week 1. That being said, the Packers have been trying a bunch of different permutations and combinations along the offensive line, especially when it comes to the guard position, Pete. We've seen a couple different combinations, namely at left guard, John Runyon Jr. in training camp getting some reps there. We've also seen Ben Braden taking reps there. Lucas Patrick looks like he's going to be in competition on the right side at right guard. How is Matt LaFleur going to divide up reps tonight along the offensive line in hopes to try to shake out some of those battles?
Yeah, that'll be something to watch, and we'll never know whether is he going to have the first 5 out there because that's the 5 he expects, or is he giving one of those interior guys like Braden? Is he giving him a longer look? I still, if you're betting, I would bet on for when the season starts, Jenkins, Runyon, Myers, Patrick, and Turner left to right. But like you said, Braden has worked both guards. He's gotten a lot of snaps. The last couple practices, it's been more Runyon at left guard than Braden, so I'm guessing he's going to start. I'm thinking that they'll go with that starting line for a possession or two so Love can have some experience working with those guys and give him a better chance to produce on offense.
We'll be seeing new defensive coordinators both sides of the ball, new quarterback for the Packers in Jordan Love. We'll also get to see new special teams coordinator Maurice Drayton in action for the very first time tonight. He has a big task ahead of him. The Packers special teams units have been mostly dreadful, I would say. They haven't fielded a top 10 special teams unit since 2007. What does tonight's game, what kind of opportunity does tonight's game present to Maurice Drayton, not only him, but also some of the bottom of the roster players that are going to be competing for a spot on the 53?
I would think more the latter than the former. I mean, the regular season is a mishmash of using guys depending on who's injured each week. And now with camp, and like you're saying, the bottom of the roster guys fighting for spots, there's going to be everybody and everybody in there on special teams. So they could end up giving up big plays. I mean, it could be really sloppy. I think what they're looking more at is individual performance for who to keep on the final 53 and who might be active on game day when the regular season starts because they're a good special teams player.
Speaking of who might be out on the 53 come regular season time, let's head over to some of your questions on Facebook and YouTube. We've got a question here from Derek. Derek wants to know if we are excited to watch running back Patrick Taylor compete tonight. The Packers will be cycling in likely a couple different running backs. We'll likely see Patrick Taylor. We'll also probably see Packers 2021 draft pick Kylan Hill also take some snaps tonight. What are you looking forward to most about these younger up-and-coming running backs?
You know, I mean, part of it is just what do they look like running the ball when guys are trying to tackle them? Do they break tackles? Do they make guys miss? But also, you know, watch them on passing plays. Do they pick up a blitzer? Are they catching the ball easily if they're getting a swing pass? I think back to Aaron Jones' rookie year. Packers had they drafted 3 running backs that year. And Jones, now I know he was hurt for part of camp too, but I don't remember him doing anything in a preseason game where you went, oh gosh, that guy's pretty good. And look at what an outstanding player he's turned out to be. So preseason's really tough. Once they got him out there in a regular season game with the #1 offensive line, it was like he was a whole different player. So we may or may not learn a lot about about some of these guys tonight.
Speaking of some of the younger players, let's also take a question here from Davey on Facebook. Davey says that they want to see Eric Stokes play, the Packers' first-round pick, cornerback Eric Stokes. How much are we likely to see from Stokes tonight, knowing that, again, preseason, not only is it a time for some of the younger players, but it's also a time for some of the more contested battles on the roster. Stokes seems to be more of a lock for the 53.
Yeah, you know, they're going to need him to play probably at some point. If even with King back, you know, injuries and dime, it looks like he might be in there in the dime if there's an injury. I would think they'd want to get him out there a lot because he's a rookie and they just want to, you know, the best training is in a game setting. And the thing I would look for if you're watching this game is that his rap coming out of him in college was he was a really good cover guy. He could stay with the receiver, but he did not play the ball well. And that's kind of been how it's looked in camp, where I don't know that he's actually knocked down a pass in camp, but his coverage is usually pretty decent. So that's one thing I'll be watching with him is if he's covering a guy and he's close, does he actually get his hand on the ball and at least knock it down or if not pick it?
Let's take a question now from Nathan on Facebook. Nathan asks, how vital will Robert Tonyan be this season? Tonyan was the top scoring tight end in the league last year, did not make the Pro Bowl. He was not too happy about that. Actually, I would say his teammates were more disappointed for him than he was for himself. How important is Robert Tonyan going to be to Matt LaFleur's offense and the Packers' overall success this season?
Yeah, his stats, if you looked at the guys who went to the Pro Bowl, they were, you know, it was the same for all those guys. One might have had more catches. Tonyan, I think, had the most touchdowns. So he was right there. I don't know what you think, but I think he's a huge part of this offense. You know, Rodgers is to the point where he really trusts him. Tight ends are really valuable in today's NFL where you can't, you don't have those huge hits over the middle anymore, so they have those big bodies to block out defensive backs like they're a rebounder in basketball. I think he's a huge part of their offense, and I would guess he's one of those guys who probably will not play very much tonight.
Let's take a question now from David on Facebook. David asks, why did the Packers fail to address the terrible defensive line? Aside from Kenny Clark, they are not good. The Packers left the defensive line mostly intact this offseason. They did add TJ Slayton in the draft. However, besides that, we're seeing a lot of returners. Yeah. Kingsley Keke back for his 3rd year in the NFL. Tyler Lancaster brought back. He was not tendered as a restricted free agent. However, the Packers were able to come to an agreement with him. Dean Lowry remains on the team. What are the prospects of this defensive line heading into the 2021 season?
Yeah, a couple things on that. One, I was surprised that was a position where there were veteran guys who they probably could have gotten near the end of free agency at a decent price, like they did with Campbell at inside linebacker. So I was a little surprised they didn't do that. That said, keep your eye on Slayton. He's flashed in camp. He's a huge guy, and he's not just one of those big guys with a big stomach who weighs 330 pounds. He's just a big, solid man, and he's looked pretty decent in camp, better than your typical rookie defensive lineman. So I think I could see him working into the rotation with who's been out. Kenny Clark's been out and Kiki out. This guy has been the third lineman in their three-man front when they go base defense. I would think he'll get a lot of snaps tonight. Number 93, if you're just looking for something to focus on, watch that guy for a few snaps and see what you think.
Let's flip it over to the offensive side of the ball. Rich wants to know, which tight end should we expect to see playing tonight? My guess, not Robert Tonyan, not Mercedes Lewis. However, after that remains a big question. Another one I'll throw into perhaps we won't see tonight would be tight end Josiah DeGuara, who is still working himself back gradually from an ACL injury. He was practicing pretty recently, so I think tonight might be a little early, Pete.
Yeah, good, interesting question, because he came back middle of last week, did not take part in family night, though, was back again this week. I'm in agreement. I wouldn't be surprised if they hold him out and maybe play him the last two preseason games. And yeah, I can't imagine Lewis suiting up, and Tonyan may or may not suit up.
Another tight end that I'll have my eye on throughout training camp now that I'm finally back and in tonight's preseason game is Dominique Daphne. He's the player that the Packers signed after Josiah DeGuara was injured. He was the second player. I think not Jake Hansen, who was the other, the tight end from Princeton that came in.
Yes, the former quarterback.
Yes, exactly.
I'm blanking on his name.
I don't know why I said Jake Hansen. But anyway, he was DeGuara's second replacement if you don't count Jay Sternberger, who also filled in for some of DeGuara's reps at fullback in particular. But now that Daphne is here, Josiah DeGuara is going to be healthy at some point come time for the regular season. How difficult is it going to be for Daphne to make the active 53 despite being a solid contributor once he was able to get into the swing of things last season?
Yeah, and I've been kind of wrestling with that. Will they keep I think they'll keep more than three with how LaFleur likes to use tight ends, and he puts them in different categories for the different tight end positions they play. It's that refined. Also, Sternberger is suspended for the first two games, so that opens a spot on the 53. I would think Daphne's chances, as long as they keep four, are pretty decent for the final 53. And the one thing we always got to remember is we're talking about these roster spots. I think they have, 15 or 16 practice squad spots. A lot of these guys that we're talking about are going to end up in the practice squad, and they'll end up, before the season's over, for either a short time or a long period, they'll end up on the game day roster. It's a long season, a lot of injuries.
We've discussed tight ends. Let's now move over to the wide receivers. David says, safe to say these guys will be the wideouts on the 53-man roster. Number 1, Devontae Adams. 2, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. 3, Alan Lazard. 4, Randall Cobb. 5, Devin Funchess. And 6, Amari Rogers. 6 receivers, Pete. How likely is it those 6 are the 6 receivers?
The one person I would not put on there as a sure bet is Funchess. I think that spot's wide open, especially the trade for Cobb probably hurts Funchess because they're getting, Cobb's not going to be running down covering kicks and punts, and they need a receiver who's capable of doing that stuff. And there's several guys going for that job. Winfrey is hurt right now, but he was off to a good start early in camp. Malik Taylor basically held that special teams job for a lot of last season as like the 5th or 6th receiver. There's several guys going for 1, maybe 2 spots. Funchess really hasn't done much in camp. He had 3 catches on family night, which was maybe his best night of camp. But I think these 3 games will be big for a guy like him. And he's basically sat out 2 years of football. He broke his collarbone 2 years ago in the opener, missed the rest of the season. Then he was at a COVID opt-out last year.
Big game for Devin Funchess tonight. Let's take a question here from, I don't know where they went, from Alex. Alex asks, will wide receiver Amari Rogers return punts tonight? the Packers, as we've already mentioned earlier in the show, need a boost of life to their special teams unit. A big part of that is regarding their return game. Last season, Tyler Ervin was returning punts and kicks. It wasn't the spark of life that the Packers needed. Now the Packers have someone who can potentially contribute a little bit after having returned punts in college at Clemson in Amari Rodgers. How likely is it that tonight we get to see a little bit of Amari Rodgers in action on special teams?
You know, you never know what they're thinking because of weighing in the injury, risk reward. I would guess that they'll want to get him out there under the lights to at least catch 1 or 2 punts. I would think he wouldn't do it all game long, but I would think they'd at least give him a shot or two just to be acclimated to having to do it with a full stadium in an NFL setting.
Another player who has been fielding punts and kicks in practice has been DeAndre Tompkins, another wide receiver, not to be confused with DeAndre Hopkins.
Which is easy to do.
It is easy. It rolls off the tongue very similarly. Jeremy asks, are the Packers set at center yet? Josh Myers, the Packers drafted him this past year, and he has been taking the majority of the reps with the ones in practice. How much of a lock is he to start at center this year?
Yeah, pretty. 98%. You know, he's taken. I mean, I'm sure somewhere in there in the team drills when Rodgers at quarterback, there may have been another center in there, but I don't remember it. This guy has been taking all the snaps with Rodgers, and he's looked okay. Now this will be the first test for him. I wonder if they'll play him a decent amount to get a look at him against NFL players. But yeah, unless something very strange happens, he's going to be their starting center for the opener.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for all of your very thoughtful questions. Hope you're ready for some Packers football. We appreciate you joining us tonight. Make sure you're checking out PackersNews.com for all of your Packers coverage. Follow us on all of the social media platforms out there, Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube. Follow us for all of the information throughout the game. We'll be sure to share some things over on those platforms as well. After the game, I will be live with Ryan Wood to wrap things up, put a nice little bow on it, and to wish you all on your merry way and get you set for training camp for the rest of the week. For Pete